But when the verdict came in and my daughter stood trembling in that cold courtroom, I didn't cry. I smiled. Not because I was proud, not because I believed she was innocent, but because I knew something no one else did, something that started long before the trial and would change everything after it. My name is Christopher Vale, and I'm the father of a girl the world calls a criminal. But they don't know her, and they don't know me. Before we dive deeper, if this story resonates with you, do me a favor. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. These real-life stories come with a twist you won't see coming. Now, where do I begin? Let's rewind 18 months. Before the media circus, before the lawyers, before the courtroom sketches and the whispers, I was a high school guidance counselor, widowed, quiet, and my daughter, Lila. Lila was brilliant, valedictorian, robotics club, never missed curfew, until the night she vanished and came back with blood on her sleeve. It was winter when it began. The snow outside our house didn't melt for days. The pipes groaned at night. And every morning, I made 2 mugs of cocoa, one with cinnamon for me, one with whipped cream for her. But one morning, she didn't come down. I knocked on her door. No answer. Her bed was made, her laptop was gone, and her phone lay on the kitchen counter, screen cracked, fingerprint wiped clean. I didn't panic. Not at first. Lila was always precise. If she needed space, she left a note. But this time, she left something else, a newspaper clipping taped to the fridge. Cybersecurity intern found dead after anonymous tip-off. The boy's name was Miles Avery, a tech prodigy, worked at a startup known for encryption software used by half the Fortune 500. Lila had mentioned him once, said he was arrogant, dangerous. I thought she meant romantically. The police found her 3 days later, in an abandoned observatory on the edge of town, disoriented, shoes missing, hands scraped. They called me to pick her up. "Sir," the detective said, glancing at me like I was the criminal, "your daughter isn't under arrest yet, but there are questions." Back home, Lila didn't speak. Not for a week. I'd sit by her bedroom door, reading aloud old bedtime stories, pretending she was still 8 years old, when monsters only lived in books. Then one night she opened the door, eyes sunken, lips cracked, and said, "Dad, if I tell the truth, people will die." I froze. That sentence didn't belong to a 17-year-old girl. It belonged in a spy novel or a courtroom drama, but not in my kitchen, not in the mouth of my daughter. "What people?" I asked, voice barely steady. She looked over her shoulder like someone might be watching. Then, with the same calm she used to explain math equations, she said, "I didn't kill Miles, but I knew who would." I reached for her hand. It was ice. "I need you to tell me everything," I said. But she only whispered, "Not yet." The next morning, she was gone again. No broken windows, no forced locks. Just gone, like smoke. I reported her missing, again. But this time, there was no gentle concern from the officers. Just suspicion. They searched the house, took her laptop, my phone, the security footage from our doorbell cam. 3 days later, I received an envelope. No return address. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note, "Hide this. If I don't come back, use it." That night, I plugged it into an old Chromebook I hadn't connected to Wi-Fi in years. The folder was encrypted, 4 layers deep, but inside, video files, dozens. Surveillance footage, chat logs, phone recordings, all time-stamped within the last 6 months. In one grainy clip, Miles Avery stood at a cafe, handing off a manila envelope to a woman in sunglasses. She wasn't Lila, but I recognized her from a news headline just days ago. A junior analyst for the Department of Cyber Defense. She'd just been found dead in her car. Suicide. Another file. Audio of a phone call. "Miles, if this leaks, everything goes down. The patents, the deals, the funders." Unknown voice. "Then make sure it doesn't leak." There was more, but I closed the laptop. I didn't want to believe it. Didn't want to admit my daughter might be entangled in something national, global even. Then the trial came. She didn't speak to me before the hearings. Wouldn't meet my eyes. They charged her with obstruction, data theft and conspiracy, said she leaked internal company secrets, that she hacked government servers, that she triggered the chain of events that got Miles killed. But I watched the prosecutors carefully. They didn't act like they were seeking truth. They acted like they were hiding something. Each time her defense tried to introduce digital evidence, it got struck down. Classified, inadmissible, a national security threat. The courtroom wasn't a place of justice, it was a stage. And someone behind the curtain was pulling strings. One day during recess, I sat across from her in the visitation room. She hadn't eaten much. Her once thick braid had thinned, ragged at the ends. "You're scared," I said. She blinked twice, our old code for yes when others were listening. "I have the drive," I whispered. This time her lips moved. She mouthed, "Don't use it unless they sentence me." That was the moment I smiled. And that's the smile you all saw in the news later. The one people called twisted, unfeeling, even smug. But it wasn't. It was the smile of a man who just became a weapon. Because if they sentenced my daughter, I would burn down every lie. And now the sentencing is tomorrow. The night before the verdict, I didn't sleep. I paced the hallway outside her empty bedroom, the same hall she used to race through in socks, sliding across the tiles to beat me to the fridge. Now every creak of the floorboards felt like a countdown. I opened the old Chromebook again, not to go through the files, just to look at the folder. Lila Insurance, still there, still untouched. It felt like a grenade, silent, cold, and waiting for a hand to pull the pin. The next morning I shaved, tied my best tie, the same one I wore to her mother's funeral. The irony wasn't lost on me. The courthouse steps were swarming, journalists, activists, onlookers. Some held signs, "No mercy for hackers." Others had posters of her high school graduation photo, "Free Lila, truth first." Inside, the gallery was full. Government agents lined the back row. Two men in gray suits stood shoulder to shoulder, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room but never settling. I'd seen their kind before. Not local, not press. Spooks. The judge entered. My daughter walked in, wrists cuffed, but chin high. I don't know how she found that strength. She hadn't looked that calm since she was 10 and gave a speech on marine biology in front of the school board. She locked eyes with me, just for a second, then looked away. The prosecutor made his final argument, cold, efficient, polished. He didn't talk about Miles Avery, or the analyst who killed herself, or the fact that 5 other witnesses connected to the case had either disappeared or gone silent. He painted Lila as reckless, said she had empathy but no discipline, a brilliant mind with no regard for consequences. Then he paused and added, "She believes she's protecting people, but in reality she endangered national interests. Sometimes good intentions still carry a cost." I heard murmurs in the back. One of the gray suits leaned into the other's ear and said something. Too soft to catch. Then the defense stood. They were brave, but their hands were tied. Classified this, classified that. Every time they tried to hint at a deeper network, the judge cut them off. Still, they left one line hanging in the room like smoke. If our government is hiding something, do we punish the one trying to expose it, or the ones who buried it? The judge frowned. Then came the moment. The judge cleared his throat, began to read the preamble to the sentencing decision. I didn't hear the words. I only heard Lila's voice in my head. "Don't use it unless they sentence me." I reached into my coat pocket, felt the USB drive. Still there, warm from my body heat. From the corner of my eye, I saw one of the gray suits twitch. His hand hovered near his belt. Not for a gun, but for something smaller. A signal jammer, maybe. They were watching me. They knew I had something. The judge's voice echoed, "Before I pass final sentence, there is a matter to be addressed in chambers." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. "What matter?" The judge nodded toward the bailiff and stepped down from the bench. The court recessed, but the tension didn't. In the hallway, I waited. 2 minutes, 5, 10. Then a woman approached me. Sharp black pantsuit, clipboard, no badge, no title, not press, not legal. Mr. Vale, she said. Her smile was professional, too perfect. We understand you've been carrying something sensitive. I said nothing. She didn't wait for me to respond. We'd like to offer a solution, quiet, clean, safe. I stared at her. You're threatening me. She tilted her head. We're offering you closure. Then she slipped a folded document into my hand and walked away. I opened it. Typed, brief, legal sounding. But the message was clear. If you release the drive, your daughter's charges will escalate. If you don't, she walks away with time served. Make the smart choice. For her. My hands were shaking. I wasn't a whistleblower. I was a father. But somewhere, deep in that courthouse, the truth was trying to drown. And I had to decide, do I throw it a rope or let it sink so my daughter can breathe? I sat on the cold bench outside courtroom 4B, holding that folded threat like it was soaked in poison. Lila's life or the truth? The drive throbbed in my coat pocket like a second heartbeat. Then I remembered something. A moment from years ago. Lila, 7 years old, caught a classmate cheating on a math test. She came home in tears because the teacher didn't believe her, and the cheater got an award. I asked her why she cared so much. She said, because when people lie and win, it tells the truth to shut up. She was 7, now she was 17, and facing decades behind bars. I stood, suddenly needing air. Outside, the sky had turned the color of bruised slate. Winter wind cut through my coat like paper. A woman near the courthouse steps sobbed into her hands, one of the activists who believed in Lila. As I walked past the crowd, something sharp jabbed my ribs. A folded note pressed into my side. I spun around, but whoever handed it off had vanished. The note was handwritten, messy, rushed. There's a file missing from the drive. The timeline isn't complete. Check the observatory server. She left something behind. The observatory, the place where they found her, where everything supposedly began. A piece of the puzzle was still sitting there, unseen, unclaimed, and someone else knew it. Back inside, the judge hadn't returned. 30 minutes had passed. Too long. Courtroom whispers were growing louder. One bailiff paced near the jury box, occasionally touching his earpiece. Then a new face appeared. A tall man in a navy trench coat. He flashed a badge too quickly for me to read it, then entered the judge's chamber. I caught a glimpse of a file folder under his arm, the same kind the prosecutor had used earlier, except this one had a seal on it, a silver one. Department of Strategic Threat Oversight. My stomach turned. That agency only showed up when the story was bigger than the courtroom, bigger than the law. Lila was brought back in, still cuffed, still quiet, but this time she looked straight at me, held her gaze, and blinked twice, then once, then twice again. It wasn't our usual code, it was Morse, something she'd practiced during a spy obsession phase in middle school. DATA. She was trying to tell me something she hadn't said under oath. She'd hidden something, maybe even from me. I reached into my coat pocket again. The USB felt heavier now, and the note still burned in my other pocket. The drive had holes, the story wasn't finished, and they were planning to bury it all anyway, maybe even her. The judge finally returned. His face was pale, tight-lipped. He glanced toward the trenchcoat man in the gallery, then read from a typed page with visibly shaking hands. The court has reviewed additional materials presented in chambers. In light of national security implications, the sentencing will be postponed for 48 hours, pending closed session review. A gasp rippled through the gallery. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the judge raised a hand. This is not up for debate. Court is adjourned. He slammed the gavel. Lila was escorted out before I could reach her. But as she passed me, she let something fall from her sleeve. A USB, smaller than the one I had, unmarked. Back at home, I sat in the dark with both drives on the table, side by side, and I didn't plug them in. Not yet, because if I opened the second one, there was no going back, no plea deal, no backroom negotiation, only the truth, and whatever punishment it brought, for all of us. The old clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. My phone buzzed. Block number, I answered. The voice on the other end was calm, female, unfamiliar. "We know you have it, Mr. Vale." I didn't respond. "The girl doesn't survive this if you push. Think of what her mother would want." My chest tightened, then silence, then a click. I sat there for what felt like hours. One drive promised leverage. The other promised the full story. And somewhere, locked in a government server or buried under legal red tape, were names, plans, payoffs, and deaths. But now it wasn't just about protecting my daughter. It was about making sure her sacrifice, whatever it was, wasn't erased. So I did what I hadn't done since this all began. I opened my laptop and reached for the second drive. But just as I did, my lights flickered and went dark. Everything in the house shut off at once. The fridge hummed, stopped. The clock on the wall froze. Even my neighbor's porch light across the street blinked out like someone had flipped the town's master switch. I stood still for a moment, listening. No wind, no cars, just silence. The kind that feels deliberate. Then the backup battery kicked in on the router, a flicker of green in the corner. Just enough to confirm what I feared. This wasn't a storm. This was isolation. I grabbed a flashlight from the hallway drawer, slid both USB drives into my coat pocket, and headed to the garage. There was no time to wait for power to come back. I needed to get to the observatory. Now, it sat on a hill just north of town, a relic from the 70s, where Lila used to stargaze on her own during high school. It had been decommissioned years ago, replaced by newer tech, but she kept going there. She once told me it was the only place where the sky didn't feel like a ceiling. I drove with my headlights off for the first half mile. Habit? Maybe paranoia. But halfway there, I noticed something. A dark SUV parked along the side of the road. No plates, tinted windows. Idling, silently. I didn't slow down, didn't look. Just kept driving like I didn't see it. 5 minutes later, I reached the hill. The observatory's gate was still off its hinges, same as when the police found her. A chain hung uselessly on the post, rusted and half buried in dirt. I parked out of sight, behind a line of frozen pines, climbed the rest of the way on foot. Inside, the air was dry and bitter. The dome had cracked open years ago, and snow had drifted in through the busted ceiling. Dust coated everything, except the far corner. There against the wall, I found something out of place. An old file cabinet, one drawer slightly ajar. Footprints led to it and nowhere else. I pulled the drawer open. Empty. Except for a torn notebook and a portable hard drive taped beneath the metal tray. The notebook was in her handwriting, sketch diagrams, IP addresses. A line of code repeated 6 times. Failover tunnel initiates when sequence matches entropy pattern. I didn't know what it meant, but the hard drive had a label scratched on it with a knife. Do not run unless you're ready to lose everything. I took both and ran, back to the car, back down the hill. But as I reached the road, I stopped cold. The SUV from earlier now sat directly across the road from where I'd parked. Engine off, no lights, no movement. I waited behind a tree, watching. Then the back passenger door opened. A man stepped out, no coat, no gloves. He lit a cigarette with fingers that didn't shake. And then, without looking in my direction, he said aloud, "Mr. Vale, no one has to die tonight." My breath caught. He hadn't turned his head, hadn't scanned the trees, but he knew I was here. Just hand over the drives, walk away, be a father. That's all we're asking. I stepped back. He dropped the cigarette, crushed it underfoot, and finally looked straight at me. There was no threat in his expression, only certainty. He wasn't bluffing, and he wasn't alone. Just as I turned to run, a second man stepped into my path from behind the trees. Tall, bald, a black earpiece in one ear. "Let's not make this ugly," he said. But I didn't stop. I sprinted left, down the ravine, crashing through ice-covered brush. A branch tore at my cheek. My boot caught a root. I went down hard, snow in my mouth, pain in my ribs. But I still had the drives, and I knew where to go. 10 minutes later, bruised and bleeding, I banged on the back door of the town's only print shop. Not for printing, for the basement. The owner, Carla, owed me a favor. And more importantly, she owed my wife everything. She let me in without a word. By the time I reached the basement, I was trembling. From cold, from fear, from adrenaline. I plugged the second USB into an offline desktop. The files loaded slowly. Old video logs, Lila, Miles, others, all talking, all explaining something, each labeled with strange acronyms and coded dates. But one video stopped me cold. Miles looking directly into the camera, voice calm. If this video plays, I'm dead. If Lila's arrested, she knew too much. And if anyone other than Chris Vale finds this, you've already lost control. He leaned forward. Check the failover vault. It's not just about the data, it's about the pattern inside the data. I pulled out my phone to take a photo of the screen. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no time. I had everything and nothing. Truth without context, proof without power. But I had one last move left. Not to expose everything, not yet. Just to send a warning. I powered on an old fax machine in the corner. Typed a message on a crumpled sheet of receipt paper. I have the pattern. If she disappears, the world will see it. Then I faxed it. To a number I memorized 20 years ago. A journalist my wife once trusted with her life. I waited for confirmation. The machine buzzed, word, spat out a line of text. Transmission successful. No reply, no ringing phone. Just a flicker of hope that someone, somewhere, now knew enough to be dangerous. It was nearly dawn when I left Carla's shop through the back alley. The bruises on my ribs were swelling. My legs shook. I hadn't slept, but I had to make it to the courthouse before the doors opened, before they changed the story again. When I arrived, something felt off. No press, no crowds, no protest signs. Just a single sheriff's deputy leaning against the marble column, sipping burnt coffee and checking his phone. I approached the door. It was locked. "Court's closed," the deputy mumbled without looking up. "Judge called in sick. Postponed another 72 hours. "What about my daughter?" I asked. That made him look up. He blinked, confused. "Your daughter?" "Lila Vale. The case. Room 4B. He stared for a moment, then tapped at a small tablet he pulled from his coat. After a few seconds, he frowned. "No record of that hearing today." My pulse spiked. There was a sentencing scheduled. "I'm telling you, sir, there's nothing in the docket." I left the courthouse steps slowly, unsure of what to think. No hearing, no press, no trace. It was as if the case never existed. I tried calling her public defender. Voicemail. Tried again. Blocked. Tried the number for the court clerk's office. Disconnected. I drove to the detention center next. The guard at the front desk was new, young, nervous. "I'm here for Lila Vale, detainee 44,312-A. He frowned, typed slowly, looked at his screen like it was lying to him. "There's no inmate by that name, sir." I felt dizzy, not just scared, like the ground under me had started to bend. "She was here yesterday," I said, voice low. He shook his head, not rudely, just blankly. "I don't know what to tell you." So I asked for a supervisor. 15 minutes later, a woman in a dark blue blazer arrived. Not a corrections officer, not a uniform. She looked like the kind of person who didn't have a name on her badge, just a barcode. "Mr. Vale," she said before I could speak. I didn't recall introducing myself. "We believe there's been a misunderstanding. You're free to file a formal inquiry through the Office of Custodial Records." She handed me a sheet of paper. It was blank. No letterhead, no seal. Just instructions on how to send a request to a restricted registry that didn't list a phone number or a website. I was being erased, not just Lila, me. My next stop was the news station where I used to appear for school events. The editor there had always liked my wife, respected her investigative work. I walked in through the back entrance and asked to speak to him. They said he was on leave. "Medical?" I asked. "Number disciplinary," the receptionist whispered. "Don't tell anyone I told you that." "What for?" She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "He ran a piece last week about a corporate contract with the DOD. 2 days later, the file vanished from our system. Then his keycard stopped working." My phone buzzed. Unknown number. This time I answered immediately. "Mr. Vale." A woman's voice, same one from before, but now it was strained. You've made your point. I didn't say anything. We don't want war. You want your daughter. Let's not escalate this. I want proof she's alive, I said. A pause, and then the sound of static. Then her voice again. Different, recorded. Dad? Lila? Short. Breathy. Don't trade, not yet. You were right. They don't want the pattern. They want... The line cut. I dropped the phone. For a moment, everything around me blurred. I knew what I had to do. Not just find the pattern, but make them chase it. Force their hand. Bring it into the open. And for that, I needed someone outside their reach. So I drove 2 hours north to a safe house only 3 people knew about. One was my wife. The second was the journalist I faxed. The third, the man waiting for me inside. He opened the door before I knocked. His beard had turned gray, but his eyes were still sharp. Chris, he said, how bad? I held up the 2 drives. They erased her. He stepped aside. Then let's write her back in. Some people disappear because they're guilty. Others because they know too much. My daughter didn't vanish in the dark. She was pulled into it by hands that don't wear fingerprints and systems that erase their own trail. But here's what they never planned for. A father who remembers everything, every word, every code, every truth they thought they buried. And if you're listening to this now, you're part of that memory. Because stories like this, they don't live in courtrooms. They live in echoes. So don't let this one fade, like this video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because next time, the truth may come from your side of the story. Until then, remember, it's not always the silence that hides the secret. Sometimes it's the smile.